Hey, gang, this week's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Hey, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free now at linkedin.com/goodseats. That's linkedin.com/goodseats to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now, here's our show.
Arena football, demonstrated by Kurt Warner and John Elway. Arena quarterbacks pass almost every play. Score so high you'll need oxygen. Running for the sidelines? What sidelines? Offense also plays defense. Oh, one more thing. The field, only 50 yards long. This is the Arena Football League, Season 17. Coming to NBC. Football is in the house.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, greetings and salutations and welcome, everybody. My name's Tim Hanlon, reporting for duty. Nice to see you all, or at least speak to you through the magic of the interwebs and all kinds of Bluetooth-enabled devices and whatnot. Thanks for coming by this week for our little shenanigans that we like to do for you on a weekly basis. We call it Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. And we're in the lull. This year, football has finally ended. I think the latest it's ever ended on February the 13th with a pretty exciting Super Bowl this year. And we're in for supposedly only a short period of time for yet another attempt at spring football, the reincarnated USFL coming your way, supposedly in early April. But while we wait for football to gear back up, let's go back to the topic of football, arena style. Yeah, football, as the promo there from 2003 and NBC, is in the house this week in our conversations. Circle around this funny and intriguing league, the original Arena League football. Yeah, there are some variations that are still out there. The Arena League rules still continue to soldier on, as well as some other variants of indoor football. But there's no mistaking the origination of the sport, as we've talked about with league founder Jim Foster in two tremendously iconic episodes from early in our lives. You can search those up on goodseatsstillavailable.com and listen to those because they are just fascinating insights into the ideation of a sport, frankly, out of whole cloth. Actually, on the back of a manila envelope, if you listen to those episodes carefully. But around 2001 or so, as the aughts sort of came about, arena football was kind of starting to become a little bit more mainstream and, frankly, gearing up for a little bit more concerted national coverage and on the ascendance in terms of all of that. That promo you just heard was from the 2003 or the beginning of the 2003 season, the beginning of 4 seasons worth of really in-depth regional and dynamic coverage by NBC of the Arena Football League. And our conversation this week actually predates that by about 2 years as we get into a conversation around largely a couple of those franchises, in particular the New York Dragons. Yeah, they played at the Nassau Coliseum. They began their lives in April of 2001. And our guest this week, Gregg Sarra, longtime New York Newsday sports reporter and columnist and now a video producer and the like, been there for dozens of years, came to our attention. Let's just sort of frame this up. Our friends at Dead Football League, which is, as you probably know, and if you don't, shame on you, an online video a channel, if you will, no other way to sort of describe it, that literally airs streaming full games of just about every dead football league that had televised coverage out there. Don't yell at me, but you're going to lose a ton of time. And we've been dying to get these guys on for a couple of years. Maybe this episode will spur them on to coming on our air and describing why they do what they do and in glorious fashion. But yours truly was tooling around on the site as I do every couple of weeks. And I just happened to be on a game that featured it was a preseason game of all things from April 8th, 2001. The New Jersey Gladiators, they of the Brendan Byrne / Meadowlands Arena at the time. I don't think it was the Izod Center at that point. I think it was still the Meadowlands Arena. At the New York Dragons at the Long Island Coliseum, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Uniondale. And this was the first ever game of the Dragons, even though it was a preseason match. Spencer Ross and Marty Lyons on the call for local cable broadcast. And it was watching at the end of the game, there was this odd sort of sequence when this journalist by the name of Gregg Sarra, our guest this week, suited up in George Plimpton type style. Paper Lion, if you remember that book from ages ago when he suited up for the Detroit Lions and lived to write about it. Well, that's exactly what Gregg did. And it's a fascinating story. So I looked the guy up, and sure enough, he's still writing for Newsday, a lifelong Long Islander. We get into lots of Long Island sports professionally, a little New York Arrows in there and some indoor lacrosse and stuff. But our main focus is on arena football, which became one of his beats, especially the New York Dragons. And the story, we'll have a link for it, that he wrote just after that game in April of 2001, is fascinating. It gives you a real insight into, and our conversation does too, into what it's like to kind of suit up for playing professional football. Yeah, it's indoor, but it's just as scary if you're not used to it. These big bruising guys who are exceptional athletes, large, muscular, in good shape, speedy, and just terrors, right, if you're on the wrong side of them, and in helmets and pads at that. We get into all of that, and it's a fascinating story, the lead up to it, how Gregg found himself suited up, getting called to play near the end of the exhibition game, and all the stuff that came before and after it. The before includes some franchises that you also may remember from Arena League football history, the late 90s New York CityHawks, who played at Madison Square Garden. The New York Knights make an appearance from 1988 in our conversation. We talk about the New Jersey Gladiators and the fact that the New York Dragons were both essentially, one in New Jersey in the Meadowlands, the other in Long Island, essentially carving up, if you will, two teams in the New York area, yet not being in New York City for most of those years. Aaron Garcia, of course, a big part of this conversation, a legendary Arena Football League quarterback star for sure. And all of that stuff is just, and we get into why the Arena League's not around anymore, how compelling the game was, why it did or didn't necessarily succeed in the New York metropolitan area, all kinds of fun stuff and a great excuse and a wonderful conversation with our guest this week, New York Newsday writer, producer, columnist extraordinaire, long-timer, Gregg Sarra, our guest, coming up in just a few moments' time. You're going to enjoy this one to no end, and we look forward to sharing it with you in a couple of seconds. First, of course, we want to say hello and thank you to some of our esteemed sponsors, two of which I think are quite relevant for this week's proceedings. Number one is 503 Sports. No, it's not 503 Sports. That's the sub-brand. Get it through your thick skull, Hanlon. It's Royal Retros now. RoyalRetros.com, the king of throwbacks. 503 Sports was the original name of the company and is now the sub-brand for lots of its great gear. And a promo code for you there at RoyalRetros.com is SEATS, SEATS. 10% off all of your purchases. And of course, there you're going to find a pretty neat assemblage, not comprehensive, but some great Arena Football League t-shirts and, yes, custom made jerseys. How about the Detroit Drive? Do you remember them? You can find their wares and their memories there at royalretros.com. The San Jose SaberCats jersey is there for you. Perhaps the Milwaukee Mustangs are stuck in your brain of memory. All those and more. Get your name on the back of them, get a number on the back of them, and wear your arena football pride by going to and buying from royalretros.com. Again, promo code SEATS for you there. And our pal Judd Lasher at 417helmets.com is a wonderful place for you to visit and buy early and often from too. 417helmets.com. That's the number 417helmets.com. Promo code for you there is good seats for 10% off all of your purchases. And unfortunately, however, and I'm not sure why, maybe Judd's got a good answer for this, but there are no yet Arena Football League mini helmets there. But you name the league otherwise, and he's got them. These mini football helmets are tremendous. They're basically the same high quality you would find with regular sized helmets, right down to the mouthpiece and the trimmings and all that kind of stuff. And they make wonderful souvenirs for the football fan in your life. And he's got a whole wide range of stuff from college and lots of different pro versions, including all of our favorite defunct football leagues. And Lord knows there just seem to be more and more of them by the year. But curiously, and maybe a little petition drive here, there are no Arena Football League helmets available at 417helmets.com. Why not, we ask? People are demanding to know. And we put it out there for Judd. Sorry, Judd. But perhaps, there is a groundswell for some of the at least initial teams maybe that inhabit our brains and maybe perhaps prove that there is a market for mini helmets for the long forgotten Arena Football League, perhaps the New Jersey Gladiators, the New York Dragons, the New York CityHawks, or even the original New York Knights from 1988. But regardless, you're going to find great helmets from all kinds of great past leagues of yore at 417 Helmets. It's collectible helmets and more. So says Judd. And again, it's 417helmets.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases, whether they're helmets or you want to put in an inquiry about the Arena League, as I will do. Have a look, and you're going to love what you find there. Thank you to Judd for his sponsorship of our little show, and thank you to Dustin Alameda at royalretros.com for the same. All right, let's waste no more time. Let us get right into the meat of the matter. Stick around and buckle up. Here we go. Let's get your pads and your jersey and your helmet on now, shall we? Let's imagine ourselves going back in time. We're going to talk to now Gregg Sarra, and let's talk about arena football and what it's like to be on the field having no professional experience. Here's our chat that we had just a couple of weeks back. Please, as always, enjoy. So for the benefit of our audience, and we'll get into the story in a second, but I was, just tooling around on this awesome Dead Football Network, which is a streaming channel that's really just devoted to, like the name implies, no longer with us football leagues. And it's just literally an endless stream of USFL and XFL, both versions, and AAF, and you name the previous league of the past in football, it's there. And I just happened to be tuning in just to see what was on of late, and there was an arena football game, and not just any arena football game, but one between the metropolitan dominant forces of the New Jersey Gladiators and the New York Dragons in a preseason game, of all things, from April of 2001. And I'm just about to turn away from it, and there's this little sort of head nod to this newspaper reporter who's playing and apparently going to be reporting on the game. And it just harkened back to things like George Plimpton and the like. And sure enough, I did some research, and here we are, Greg. And I'm fascinated by the story, but maybe before we get into it, tell me maybe how you sort of came into that position in the first place, because you're a reporter by trade, right?
Right. I am a reporter. I've been with New York Newsday, Newsday of Long Island now for 36 years. That career started when the professional baseball career didn't happen. it was an opportunity that I love sports and I love to write. And that opportunity availed itself in 1985, and I jumped on it and rose through the ranks in the journalistic world, from a part-time sports assistant to a full-time reporter, to a columnist, to a multimedia coordinator, to the high school sports editor, and opportunities to be on all different kinds of social platforms. As we move forward through this career, we've been doing all sorts of things. We have a new studio at Newsday, so I get a lot of TV time. I had a 5-year stint with what was MSG Varsity, which is varsity sports on TV. Just like ESPN Sports Desk, we had the MSG Varsity Sports Desk. We treated the high school athletes here on Long Island as if they were professional athletes. They were on TV every night, and features and game stories. And my career has been a blessing. I've been involved in sports. I covered the Yankees, the Mets, the Jets, the Giants for a period of time in the early 90s through the mid 90s. Then my family started to take shape, and it was a lot easier to cover locally and stick to the grassroots, which is my expertise. And there were opportunities that availed themselves in some of these local pro leagues that were starving for media attention. And, there was an opportunity with the Dragons that came up, and we can get to that whenever you'd like. But I was kind of challenged to come out and see what the Arena Football League football was like, how close to the NFL all these football players were, that they weren't a joke, that this wasn't just some league with, playing football in a hockey rink and risking their lives. And these were talented, tremendously athletic athletes in great shape that were looking for a shot in the NFL. And Charles Wang, who owned the New York Dragons, reached out to me and said, I know that you're a fantastic athlete, and I'm challenging you to come out and play with my boys. Would you do it? Do you have the guts? That's how it started.
Well, before we sort of dig into that, let's also sort of set the scene a little bit, especially for those folks who are not familiar or from the New York, New Jersey, Long Island metropolitan area, like I had the benefit or questionable background to do in New Jersey. Describe Long Island, in a particular, the Long Island sports scene, because you're talking about some of these leagues and teams. A lot of this actually centers around a facility that's still around called the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which for the New York metropolitan area was always, I wouldn't call it plan B for a fledgling league or a team or whatever, but was always there sort of as a lever should the downtown New York City thing not work out, or at least a chance to put the name New York onto something if you wanted to be credible.
Well, Tim, you nailed it, because the first Arena Football League team in the New York metropolitan area did play at Madison Square Garden in the middle of Manhattan. And they played there for about 5 years. Mike Perez was the quarterback. He had a little stint with the Giants, but it never really grabbed the attention or the interest. It never piqued the interest of New York City. And you're right, Nassau Coliseum was host to the New York Saints, which was an indoor lacrosse team. They had the monster the truck jams in there where they would, monster trucks would come in and ride around. But it was the New York Islanders, which was secondary for a long period of time when they first came into the New York Rangers. But then the Islanders had that great run in the 1980s and became the team in the New York area. You have the Long Island Ducks, was a hockey team that played out on Long Island, more like a B-level professional team. But you never really had a major sports team out on Long Island. We don't have one. The closest that we have out here, we also have the Long Island Ducks of the it's a professional baseball team right now on Long Island of the Atlantic League, but that's not affiliated with Major League Baseball. So yeah, you're right. It's always been like B-level type of teams to entertain the Long Island people and give them what they need for sports.
Well, the New York Arrows, the Major Indoor Soccer League, right, which had championship runs almost harmoniously with that of the Islanders in that early 80s period of time.
Well, they did. And I'm going to ask you a question. Did Pele play on that team at all?
No,
Or was
no,
that
but
Chef Messing?
Chef Messing did, yeah, and a whole
Yeah,
bunch of former Cosmos players indeed played
right.
with the New York Arrows and stuff. But and it's interesting, and maybe this sort of segues into it because this is an arena and a market that is at once New York City metropolitan area, yet also quite distinct and in some respects almost doesn't want to have anything to do with the New York City area per se.
Well, it has no mass transit to it. That's one of the reasons why it's so difficult. You got to drive to get there. And a lot of people don't see that. Madison Square Garden, you get out of Penn Station, you walk right to Madison Square Garden. It's in the heart of Manhattan. The Nassau Coliseum is standalone. It's right by Hofstra University. So that in itself is something that should be looked at.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let me get into then. So you're kind of getting your journalistic sea legs in the mid 1980s. Maybe describe sort of the sports scene that was around you then, and perhaps what you were charged with doing from your earliest days to, I'm guessing, getting assigned to some stories, some teams, some beats, maybe even volunteering for some of those.
Yeah, so the opportunity in the 80s was to come aboard and be part of the high school staff. And we have 135 high schools on Long Island. The Newsday does a phenomenal job of covering all high school sports, all sports. There's 37 different sports, and it's a big undertaking. And we have a large high school section. So our constituents are expecting us to cover every sport. It's not just high school football, lacrosse, baseball, basketball, soccer. It's field hockey, fencing, swimming, golf. It's everything. All right. So anything volleyball, anything that you can think of in high school sport was covered by Newsday. So that was the beginning, the foundation of my job and working for Newsday. While that was happening, at that point in time, the Islanders were on a terrific run with winning a bunch of Stanley Cups. The Yankees were just starting to put it together with Don Mattingly, Dave Winfield. They were starting to win again in the mid '80s. The Mets had a great World Series run in '86. The Rangers were still trying to put it together. They didn't win another Stanley Cup until 1994. The major market teams were the Islanders, the Rangers, the Jets, the Giants, the Knicks, and the Nets. And the Knicks had a great run through the mid '80s with Patrick Ewing and Bill Cartwright. That whole group of players, they were great. John Starks. So sports in the New York area in the mid '80s was blossoming. It was really exciting. Every season brought with it hopes of a championship. Something like kind of what Philadelphia and Pennsylvania has gone through in the last, X amount of years. They've really been the place, in Boston and Massachusetts with the Patriots, the Red Sox. It was kind of our time. The Bruins up in Boston. They've had that run now. But for me, it was focusing on local grassroots stuff, writing about that, learning, how we do what we do at Newsday. And it was all about print back then. There really wasn't anything video. There was no social media yet. The internet did not exist. And if you wanted to cover anything outside of, like, when the high school season ended, I got to cover Yankees and Mets baseball all summer. So it was awesome. It was like a treat. You go out and you get to cover pro games. So that's how I started my career at Newsday.
How do you then get sort of the assignments, and then how do you, I'm guessing that some of these challenger leagues and teams and that kind of stuff is kind of the scraps maybe that the top editors don't necessarily want to cover, or they need coverage and stuff. How are you making your mark? And I'm assuming, I'm projecting on you here, that you're probably trying to throw yourself into those kinds of situations and opportunities.
Well, like in anything, in any job, you have to really be self-motivated. You have to be inspired to go out and do some of the things that other people don't want to do. What I thought I cut my teeth on in the high schools was the wrestling. Long Island has phenomenal wrestling. It's a hotbed for lacrosse. And we really didn't have a high school wrestling writer in the late 80s. So I kind of grabbed onto that and made that the sport that I wanted to be an expert in. And I've been to 35 state championships since that started. And I really felt that if you could go out and take a beat and make it yours and know everything that you need to know about it, not surface things like everybody knows who the top 5, let's say, wrestlers are. Like if you ask anybody, they know who the top quarterbacks are in football, but do you know who the linemen are? Do you know who the tight ends are? You know, can you get beyond the surface? Can you get to the middle of the pack and give me an interesting story of why the middle of the pack matters? Can you get down into the weaker teams and pull out some great stories? And that's kind of what I did. I went out and I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this mine so that people come to me and ask me about it. Same thing with arena football. I loved arena football because I liked the action. And I thought it was crazy. These guys are running around the field full gear, crushing each other. And the field goals and the kick returns. And it was just a sport that I love football. I played national flag football for a really long time. We had a great football team here on Long Island, traveled to some great places, RFK Stadium, Michie Stadium up in West Point, Giants Stadium. We played in there 6 times. You know, so for me, football was, I played in high school, had opportunities to play nationally with a bunch of great players in flag football. And now the next level up from that, from full contact flag football, was these guys playing arena football. And like you said earlier, XFL, USFL, it all failed because none of it is the NFL. But the AFL, the Arena Football League, was, I would say, 70% of the guys that were there were still looking for a shot in the NFL. And their agents told them, go play there, play well, and we'll get you a shot, get you on a practice squad, get you an invite to training camp. And you had a lot of hungry athletes there. And I liked that. So I wanted to go there and tell their story, especially when the CityHawks folded in Madison Square Garden.
All right, well, let's talk about that for a second, because that's actually important. Okay. Because I'm assuming that was your first sort of visceral exposure or even beat reporting to the league, because the league had really, you know, kind of avoided, for various reasons, the New York area since that very first or second season. Right. So let's talk about these New York CityHawks, because I think a lot of people forget. I mean, people forget the AFL, and obviously there are some reincarnations of what the Arena League was all about still around for sure. But there was a team playing in Madison Square Garden for 2 seasons in the late 90s called the CityHawks.
The city never embraced the CityHawks.
Well, I think you're being charitable now.
Yeah.
But describe them, right? Like how they came about and like why all of a sudden and why New York and taking the big, you know, Madison Square Garden, which has a ton of tenants already with not a lot of great dates and stuff. I mean, describe that sort of setup, because then we'll get into the meat of the matter when we get to Long Island.
Yeah, the very first game that I covered for the New York CityHawks, you know, I get there and I'm expecting it to be like going to a Ranger game, you know. But it was nothing like that. It was, you got into the Madison Square Garden, you came out, and there was, in an arena that can seat 14,000 people, 13,000 people, you might have had a smattering of 3,500, 4,000 people spread out all over the arena. And then you had these 2 football teams come running out onto the football field, warming up, and the crowd was into it. I mean, they put a lot of money into it. But it wasn't something that the city was willing to say, this is real. And it never did. They were right. It never were able to basically grab the attention of the city. People would rather spend their money on the Rangers or the Knicks. And at that time, and it could have been timing, maybe there was way too much attention on those professional teams and people weren't taking the AFL serious. Remember, the AFL originated out in the Midwest. You know, the Iowa Barnstormers were one of the great teams, but I never could understand how LA could have, with the Avengers, could have so much interest. Arizona Rattlers could have so much interest. Iowa could have so much interest. John Bon Jovi bought the Pennsylvania franchise with Philadelphia, Philadelphia Soul, and they packed the place. They were packed. But you come to New York City and they couldn't fill half the arena. Why? And I could never understand it. Mike Perez was a great quarterback. He was a former Giant. They had players. They just could not make it work.
Yeah, so I think some of it, though, was, if I have this right, I think the league actually had been eyeing New Jersey as their sort of entry into the New York metropolitan market with the New Jersey Red Dogs in the Meadowlands. And my understanding is that Madison Square Garden or somebody affiliated with the Garden said, hey, why can't we get a team in the city proper and maybe sort of make a dual effort out of it or something to that effect. But I guess part of it had to do with the fact that in essence, what happened in 97 was you had in 96, you had 0 franchises in the New York metro area in this still fledgling Arena Football League. The next season, 97, you had 2. That maybe had something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say you're right. That definitely had something to do with it. And they had a great logo. They had great uniforms. They had the whole thing. They had the cheerleaders. They promoted it. They went out of their way to promote the team and the excitement of the high scoring AFL. It was on TV. Did not grab anybody's attention. New York City was hustling and bustling, and they were like, yeah, there's a football game going on in a hockey rink, but that's weird.
So why do you think then? I mean, was it? I mean, we see this has been a classic case. I mean, it like you go back now to the Major Indoor Soccer League with the New York Arrows, right? They were a success on the field. I mean, they basically invented the championship indoor soccer formula, really. But they never really drew more than, I think, 7,000 people on an average year out there on Long Island. Now, some of it was being out there on Long Island, some of the location challenges you mentioned. But here was a league that was just doing gangbusters. You had a team like the St. Louis Steamers that was like one of the leading indoor pro sports franchises in terms of attendance, including the NBA and the NHL. Yet here it comes to the big city, if you will, and it doesn't seem to fly here in the metropolitan area.
Well, one of the things that will always be something that grabs people's attention is when you win. So what I remember from the first year, and I'll tell you something really cool, the first kickoff ever in New York CityHawks history was kicked past the net. The guy missed the net, and I caught it in the press box. And I was like, wait a minute, I got to keep the ball. And that's what they did. If the ball went in the crowd, whether by pass or by kick, the fans got to keep the ball. So I caught the ball in the press box, and I went to give it to the usher, and he's like, no, you keep it. He goes, and that's a penalty. I go, what do you mean? He's got to hit the net so they can return it off the net. And he goes, we used to have, I never forgot, this guy was working at Madison Square Garden for like 30 years. He goes, we used to have arena football in New York. I go, when? He goes, like 10 years ago. He goes, they were called the New York Knights, and they weren't good. And I was like, wow. I go, really? He goes, yeah, I didn't even know about it. He goes, yeah, nobody did. And that's why it was gone fairly quickly. So the CityHawks come in, probably 10 or so years later. And if I remember right, that first year, they only had like 3 wins. They did not do well. They were terrible. And, when you're losing 68-39, nobody's coming to watch. Who wants to watch a losing team? Nobody. Meanwhile, like you said about the New Jersey team that they had, those Red Dogs, they were owned by one of the former Giants, I believe. I don't remember who it was.
I think it was Joe Morris was like the big guy.
Oh, the running back. That's right. The running back. And they were fairly successful. I think, that they were somebody that they did okay. They weren't a complete failure. But it's funny, like when the Dragons started, and I know you don't want to jump to them yet, but I could tell you things about the Dragons that was unbelievable. And I couldn't believe this thing didn't take hold and last a very long time. It was only in the Garden for like 7 years.
Well, I mean, were you essentially covering this team for Newsday then?
Yes.
Was this part of essentially your beat? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I volunteered because I liked it, and it was fun and exciting. And we covered every home game, and then we even covered a couple of away games. I even got to fly on Charles Wang's private jet to one of the games out in Dallas, which was super cool. I'd never been on a private jet, and Newsday gave me permission to go out to the game because it was a playoff game, and I got to go out there and sit in a private jet and get home really quick, right after the game. You get right to the airport and you go home. So there was some cool experiences.
All right. Well, before we leave the CityHawks, so give me a sense then of well, a couple of things. One, how are you? I'm guessing you had to pitch your stories back in the news, right? To get that column time and or that space, and make the case that this is worth not only covering but giving more ink towards.
There was a couple of opportunities to write about the CityHawks because of Mike Perez having played for the New York Giants, and there were so many players in and out of the AFL heading to the NFL and getting opportunities in the NFL that our editors felt, you know what, we should be there in case any of our local teams, the Jets or the Giants, sign any of these guys from the Arena Football League. This was played in the spring, so there was an opportunity for these guys to then get invited to summer camp with the NFL teams. And that pretty much was the angle that I was taking on everything. But our coverage waned on the CityHawks after they won 3 games or whatever it was that first year. My boss was like, yeah, we're not going to go there. They're just not good. And your game stories are okay, but we don't really feel like it's something we need to cover. And that had happened to all of those kind of teams, like the New York Saints, the indoor lacrosse team. Same thing. I covered them. And when they started losing all the time, we said, you know what? We're not covering it anymore. They're just not a good program. They don't win. And that's how that works. You unless you're the Yankees and the Mets and you have a huge following, and the Jets and the Giants, if you don't have that big following yet and you don't win, you're not getting the coverage.
And that's around the same time. We're talking, this is sort of the Saints were kind of mostly the 1990s, a little bit, or a lot part of the 80s and the early 2000s, right?
Yes. And what I remember most about the New York Saints was they had so much talent. Sal Locascio was who's a Hall of Famer in indoor box lacrosse, goalkeeper. Jimmy Muley, Steve Sombrato, his brother Vinny Sombrato, Mark Millen. A lot of a hotbed for lacrosse. So it was very easy to recruit for these guys because they had great talent in their own backyard. And I think that's what they thought was going to keep the Saints alive. It was going to pack the Coliseum. People were going to come and watch all the local Long Island stars play indoor lacrosse. And I covered them for a long period of time. You're probably right. It started in the early 90s and it went through the early 2000s. But I think our coverage waned after a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still, I mean, look, the Long Island market is still very much a lacrosse hotbed. I mean, there have been no fewer than 4 teams, the current one now, the Riptide, right, have been out there. And it just, the economics seem to make sense. The audience base seems to make sense. But, some of it also tends to be, leagues itself and stuff. I mean, the original National Lacrosse League, right, had some strong years and got off to a centralized ownership structure, and then it kind of sort of withered away as time went on. So I'm sure the Saints were not immune to that either. Back on the CityHawks, though, they ultimately moved, right? I think they moved to New England after their second season.
Yeah, I don't think they got any better either.
Right, but you didn't.
They were the Seawolves after they left. They went.
Right. And you didn't continue to cover them, though, after that. No. We honestly, the second year when they were losing all the time, we kind of stopped covering them. And it was terrible. So I was fired up when they moved out of the city, and then Charles Wang announced that they were bringing an AFL franchise to Long Island with the New York Dragons. It was only a couple of years later, in like 2001, that we had arena football back. So, I was pumped. All right. Well, so let's talk about that origin story then. For those who don't remember, Charles Wang was the owner of, and some would argue, in some cases, the savior of the New York Islanders NHL franchise, and I think even the Coliseum itself, right? So maybe a little bit of background about Charles Wang and the Islanders, because without that, we don't have a Dragons, I don't think.
I agree with you. Charles Wang was a wealthy businessman from Shanghai, from China. He was a very generous guy. He was a billionaire, a philanthropist. He was a guy who cared about his local roots, but also cared about where he lived and wanted to see sports in the Nassau Coliseum succeed. He had proposed a whole bunch of different things for a hub in Nassau County. Like I was saying earlier, there was no mass transit going to the Nassau Coliseum. He was willing to build all sorts of things in Nassau County, and he kept getting shot down. He kept getting voted out, that they didn't want that kind of traffic in the county. And I never understood that. This is a guy who brought the AFL to us, saved the Islanders. The Islanders were in a bad way when he bought them. He's built buildings in almost every university in our area. He's amazing. He was the owner of Computer Associates here on Long Island from, I guess that was in the late 70s, early 80s. He was well known and just a phenomenally nice guy and ultra competitive. As you can imagine, you don't become a billionaire unless you have some drive and you're not super competitive.
How does the Dragons story get around? I mean, like, why? I mean, we've talked about this sort of scenario in other sort of concepts, and it's actually pretty historical too. But there's sort of a love-hate relationship, I think, between owners of teams in leagues, and then sort of moonlighting with another team, maybe in the same arena in another league, right? And that sort of has evolved over time. But I'm curious as to why, and maybe you didn't have this conversation with him, but why the Arena Football League, say, versus another team, say, in another league, to add into his little assemblage there at the Coliseum.
I think what happened was Charles had a couple of guys working for him that were advisors. Michael Picker, Paul Lancy. These were guys who were out in the community who are Long Island natives, they're really in the grassroots of Long Island, what the Long Island people want. And they said to him that they felt that this Arena Football League franchise would be profitable. It would be a good business to get into. Long Island will embrace it. They'll love it. They were a big part of the Islanders. So with that being said, Paul Lancy, whose son was a terrific athlete at Comac High School, he had reached out to me and said, Charles Wang would like to speak to you about the New York Dragons Arena Football League team coming to Long Island. Would you be interested in talking to Charles? And I was like, Charles Wang wants to talk to me? And he's like, yeah. I told him you were a terrific athlete, that you're still very active, and that you would love it because you covered the New York CityHawks and you'd be the right guy. So I said, sure. I agreed to a meeting with Charles Wang. And that's how I started covering the New York Dragons. Charles Wang sat across the table from me at lunch and challenged me to not just come and write about the team or watch the team. He said if I was a good enough athlete that I should be able to practice with the team and maybe play in its first game. Would I be interested in that challenge? And I looked at him and I said, I absolutely would be. And he started to laugh. And he said, so you would put your life in your hands and come out and play against my monsters and possibly get killed in a football game? And he was laughing. And I said, well, when you put it that way, it's a little different. But yeah, I would be willing to come out there. I'm a fairly big guy. I'm in good shape. I'm not really intimidated by anything. I think it would be fun. And he goes, you have a deal. And he shakes my hand. And I said, deal for what? He goes, you are on the New York Dragons. You're invited to camp. We start Monday. So it's like, okay. So I went back to Newsday. And I had to ask. I couldn't just do it. And I said, we have an opportunity. And the sports editor at the time was a guy named Steve Rowinski. And he was hesitant. And he's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. You could get hurt really bad. I go, yeah, you can. It's football, and it's real football. It's full gear, full contact. But I'll be fine. I'll protect myself. And they went and talked to legal, the lawyers at Newsday, and they said, look, if he wants to do it and we get great stories out of it, let's do it. So we did. And that was the start of that.
This, for background, this is Charles Wang was a minority owner, a part owner of the Islanders starting in 2000 and became majority owner in 2001. So this is around that time. And I think it was also around the time he was segueing out of his company. There was a bunch
out of Computer Associates. Yeah, correct.
And there was a number of lawsuits about stock option awards and that kind of stuff. I don't think he was ever sort of, I think rumors, and he was sort of close around it, but he was never sort of,
he was never implicated in anything,
right.
Or charged.
So,
but his partner was.
Yeah,
he was not.
Yeah, so in essence, he was essentially segueing into becoming a sports baron, if you will.
That's right.
And it seems like he had a full head of steam, I guess, and no lack for confidence, I guess. Not only about the being in charge of the Islanders, but the value and the promise of an Arena Football League team. I mean, did he and or your editor have they ever heard of a guy named George Plimpton or read the Paper Lion? I mean, did anybody understand that this wasn't sort of a new idea per se? Or I'm just curious because it just smacks as a sort of more modern day version of what Plimpton did years prior in various sports.
Well, it definitely was something that they talked about, that, you go out and you get involved with a professional franchise as a reporter, there's a lot of trust on both sides of that too. You're reporting from inside the organization of what's going on. There can be no deals. Whatever happens, I can report on it. So it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. If something ugly happens and I'm there, well, you risk, that. And you know how teams are. They don't want the media knowing everything that's going on behind closed doors. But Charles Wang and Coach John Gregory opened their doors to Newsday and to me and said, hey, look, we want you to get the full Monty, what this arena football thing is all about. And we're giving you that opportunity. So if your George Plimpton wannabe, Gregg Sarra, wants to do this, we'd love to have him. And that's how it all started. And that's how I got involved with it.
All right. So
it wouldn't be the first time that I did something like that. So there was the first time, but I would do it again later in life.
All right. Well, so let's circle around then the specifics of this, right? So the team was it was in preseason 2001, and that's when you made your debut appearance. So you literally had nothing to kind of go on except maybe for Charles Wang's word and maybe what you were hearing from the coaching staff and the and the general management of the team, right? That's really all you had to go on, and your experience, I guess, with the CityHawks and understanding the AFL otherwise. But this wasn't even after like a year or a season or a process in place there. No. You're literally in one of the first ever and not even regular season matches. I mean, what's going through your head as to why this, at least on paper or on the field, is a good idea?
Ego. Always wanting to show that, you can compete with anybody at any level in any sport. Ultra competitive. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I was an all-star athlete in college. I was a 4-year scholarship baseball player in Division II Dowling College. I was a guy who had all the skills and the skill set of being a professional athlete. I was never intimidated or afraid to take a chance. I was always a captain of a team, a leader, and I wasn't afraid of it. I thought it was going to be something that would enhance my career. I thought it was something that would be fun to do, to write about it, to experience it, to meet people that I may never get to meet, to go out and do it. And, I went into it with my eyes wide open, and wow, I learned a couple of things the first, couple practices about how big and how strong and how fast football players are at the next level. And I'm talking about, I played through high school, but I did not play in college. I played baseball. But when you go out and you get hit by a 240-pound, 6'3" guy running full speed, 8% body fat. And you're 30, I guess at that point in my life, when I did the Dragons, I was 39 years old. I wasn't small by any means, 5'11", 230 pounds, and in good shape. All right. I got leveled a few times because those guys were never told that I was a reporter the first couple practices, only until I got wiped out on an outdoor kickoff because we practiced out at Kings Point in an outdoor arena with the same dimensions with boards as the indoor arena. Did the guys realize, hey, take it easy. This, you could hurt this guy really bad. But a lot of those guys didn't want a reporter out there. And that's where you come into the gray area. They're like, well, wait a minute. Is this guy coming out here making a mockery out of our profession? We'll lay him out, knock him out cold, and show him that this is the real deal. Or is he coming out here to tell the world that we're for real and we're just this close to making the NFL, and there's a lot of talent out here? Which way is that going to go? So there was a strong message sent in the first couple practices and first couple workouts. And I became very friendly with Rodney Filer, who had played with the Chargers, and Aaron Garcia, who was a great quarterback and a friend. And they kind of told the guys in the room, hey, look, this guy's going to do the right thing. He's not here to embarrass anybody, so take it easy. And I became friendly with like everybody on the team. They were all like, they were with me. And I did it for a month of workouts before our first workout, our first preseason game, the first game ever in the Nassau Coliseum. And that was exciting. I get to run out with the team with all the fireworks and the fans, and it was packed. There was 9,000 to 10,000 people there for the first game at the Nassau Coliseum. And they announced your number, and you warmed up in the end zone with the whole team in full gear and getting dressed. You had all the adrenaline and you were fired up, and it was crazy.
All right, what's this? LinkedIn Jobs. Hey, these days it can be hard to find and hire the right candidates for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs made it easier to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people. My goodness. Focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, and use screening questions to get your role in front of only the most qualified. Then use the simple tools on LinkedIn Jobs to quickly filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. Yes, it's no surprise, friends, that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Of course. Well, did you know that every week that nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Come on. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/goodseats. That's linkedin.com/goodseats to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now back to our conversation. So, how did your position get determined? How did you evolve during the training? I mean, was it?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, were you? I know a lot of the players, at least at that time in the league, had to be two-way in nature.
A lot of them were two-way. There were very few specialists. I had played national flag football as a quarterback. I quarterbacked in high school. That's my gift from God. I have a great arm. I'm 60 years old now, and I can still throw the rock with velocity. I still throw BP to my baseball players. I can do it every day. I went there to just quarterback. I wanted to get in for a series at quarterback late in the game, in an exhibition game, and just feel the rush, feel what a quarterback feels like, and get hit, throw a pass, see the speed of the game. That was the plan. As the game as we get to the game, and I had worked out at quarterback, I had worked out on the special teams, and I had worked out at the middle linebacker at Mike Backer. And there's a lot of rules in the Arena Football League with the Mike Backer when you're not allowed to leave the box until the pass is thrown, or if the running back gets outside the tackle. There's a lot of rules. So it's kind of a safe position on the defense because you have to react to the play. You're not allowed to just move about and do things. So that's cool. During the game, now the game starts. The announcements are over. We're playing the game. We're winning. And I'm nervous. I'm honestly terrified that Gregory is.
Yeah, this is the first ever game, right? Sorry, this is the first ever preseason.
First ever preseason game for the New York Dragons. And I'm on the bench with all the guys, and the guys are great. We're playing great, and we're winning. And, New Jersey's guys, like, they're walking past the bench. I'm looking up at these guys, and I'm like, man, they're huge. Jeez. And I'm laughing, too, because I'm like, I practiced with guys that were this big the whole time, but it never really dawned on me that these guys are on the other team. They're not my friends. They're not a teammate. If I go out there, I am definitely risking my health and my safety. There's no doubt. So the game winds down into the fourth quarter. We're up by whatever it was, 8 or 9. And it's obvious that I'm not going to get in a quarterback, which is fine. I'm okay. I'm kind of relieved. I'm anticipating not playing, and it's okay. I know that our photographer got pictures of me warming up and sitting on the bench with Coach Gregory and talking to Aaron Garcia during the game. And then with about a minute 40 left, John Gregory turns around to me and he says, Gregg Sarra. And I said, yes, Coach. And he goes, you ready to go? And I go, where are we going? He goes, we're going on defense. You go to Mike Backer right after the kickoff. I go, okay. So you got to stretch on the bench in the Arena Football League, especially when you're not going both ways. So I started to stretch a little bit. They kicked off, and then I hop over the boards, and I jog out on the field. I have my helmet on. I get in the huddle, and I am the smallest guy on the field.
Gregg Sarra. Oh, you may know that guy from his byline. Gregg Sarra, number 33, who...
From Newsday.
He's the paper lion for the Dragons. The writer for Newsday, he gets his chance right here with 14 seconds to play. Get up on him, Gregg. Puts his hands up, couldn't get it, ball knocked away, and it's ruled a completed pass to Lawrence Samuels. Keep Sarra in there on the goal to go. I want to see this. Are we going to watch Sarra on the replay?
Watch this vertical jump right here.
Pretty good.
You can slide a piece of paper underneath it. Watch, he sees it, watch him jump. Oh!
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all.
Okay, Gregg Sarra getting his opportunity. And I'm sure you're going to read about it in Newsday tomorrow. Worked out with the team. Pretty good athlete.
He's going to get a chance down here. 7.2 seconds left to go in the game.
If the Gladiators know about him, are they going to run the play out?
Well, this is what they need to do. If they know that he's in there, put Chris Pope back in there, that big bruising fullback.
Newsday may lose a writer for a couple of weeks.
It's a whole new awareness when you think you can play the game, and now you're actually out there.
And suddenly you're right in a goal line situation. You're toward the top of your screen.
So Rico, number 33 in at fullback.
They're throwing him, looking away from him. And the ball thrown out of bounds. And we got still 1.5 seconds to go in the ball game.
Up and over the wall,
yeah.
Number 18.
See how Sarra fared on this play.
Mitch Aldner went up over the wall. Watch Sarra here. Moves, stands, moves, jumps. Whew. Thank you.
Thank you for not running to me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
He's got a mouthpiece, everything. You can see, look at that mouthpiece, and it's molded.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Here we go.
He got ready for this. Final play of the game with a second to go. And the Dragons leading 69-49. And that'll do it as the ball is thrown out of the end zone. And Gregg Sarra comes out of it unscathed as one of his teammates gets into a scuffle with one of the Gladiators. And that is quickly ended.
He's over there. Hey, break it up. The game's over.
Gregg Sarra of Newsday.
And I get in the huddle. And Rodney Filer is the middle linebacker. He looks at me and he puts his arm around me and goes, Hey guys, check it out. Newsday is in the huddle. My man. And he pounds me in the chest. He goes, you ready to go? I said, I'm ready to go. And he goes, let's do this. And he calls the play on defense, what we're doing. And he says to me, he goes, I got you. And I was like, I love it. And Chin Achebe, who was also on the team, another monster. He's like, Gregor, I got you. I go, I got you guys. I felt comfortable, And the quarterback comes up to the ball. He's like 6'6", with his helmet on. You know how big football players are. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and I go to myself, holy cow, these guys are huge. Well, they call the play. The guy throws a seed over the middle. I jump. The ball goes over my hands. It goes incomplete. Next play, they throw incomplete. Next play, they throw a pass 15 yards. Guy catches it. We all go to tackle him. I just miss making the tackle, but I'm aggressive on the play. They end up turning the ball over and downs. The game ends. I played like a total of 6 plays or 5 plays in the game. I don't remember what it was. And finished the game. We win. I'm on the field for the win. And I find out after the game that when it was being televised, so everybody at home was watching. And Marty Lyons, the ex-New York Jets, said on the play that the ball sailed down the middle of the field and I jumped to try to block the pass. And he's like, did you see that, Gregg Sarra? Did you see him jump that vertical? He goes, man, you could slip a piece of paper under that. And I'm good friends with Marty Lyons, so I have a good sense of humor. So I hear that from everybody that night. Did you hear what Marty Lyons said about you? He was giving you love on TV, but he did make fun of your vertical jump. I said, oh, great. But then I saw Marty after the game. He came over and gave me a big hug down by the locker room. He goes, man, I got to give it to you. That was great. We were talking, and it's something in your life that you're just happy you did it. And you know what? I was blessed with knowing Charles Wang and given that opportunity and being able to write about it. And Charles Wang actually sent me a framed, autographed piece of what I wrote in Newsday with all the pictures of me in the Dragons uniform and what it was like and what the Arena Football League is all about. And Charles Wang wrote me a beautiful note on it. And I'll never forget that. It was so cool.
So coming off of that, how do you square that experience and then kind of find your sort of inner journalistic soul to put pen to paper and sort of write about it, right? Because it's not like you're taking notes during the game. Like what? Maybe a little insight into the process of how you come up with this column and then I guess a few others, and then frankly how then it informs your coverage of the team as the season gets underway and you're reverting back to being a mere spectator sports writer.
Yes. So the most important thing that I did from day one of the experience is I created a journal and I kept track of everything that happened and how it went down and emotions and reactions and the guys in the locker room and who was who and how the hierarchy of the program worked and how the practices went and what these guys went through, what it's like to be an Arena Football League player and what it's like to want to be the guy that, like me, I wanted to be, in the MLB. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. And instead I played independently. So that was me putting myself in their position. Well, I was in your shoes in a different sport. So I get it. And interacting with them and injecting myself into the situation and writing about the actual game experience. The hurdle after that was now taking your helmet off and being the writer and not being conflicted and being able to be fair and balanced and do your job as a reporter and having to do everything the way you would have to do it as if you were never in a Dragons uniform. And that was not hard for me. And I explained that to people like, look, if something here goes down that's on the negative side of things, I'm still going to have to report it. That's my job. And everybody understood that. And to Aaron Garcia's credit, he was a classy professional. Even in tough losses, he would spend 20 minutes to a half an hour with me after games explaining what went down, what happened, what's going on inside the program with the team. Charles Wang always appreciated that I had the guts to do that, to pull it off. So for me, it was a learning experience. It's also why it's difficult for journalists in some ways. You know, you want to have your contacts, but you don't want to get too close to people because you want to be able to keep that fine line of writing your stories and being fair and being able to report the news to your readership.
Does it sounds like the players literally had your back. You had kind of won them over in the training process. How do they feel about the piece? And frankly, your coverage of the team afterwards, what was the relationship like then, especially when you kind of maybe had to call things like you see them? I mean, the good news is the team was quite competitive, made the playoffs.
They were good.
You were,
they were good.
Unlike the New Jersey Red Dogs, who emulated more like the CityHawks with I think they only won two wins that season.
Yeah. So the story was received well. The guys loved it. Charles Wang and Paul Lancy and Mike Picker, they loved it. They thought that I was fair. They thought it gave a really in-depth look at what the Arena Football League was all about. I know the commissioner was very happy with it. An inside look at what the Arena Football League was. People enjoyed it. People enjoyed the fact that a regular guy got out and got to play in a game and survived. You know, people thought, wow, that's pretty cool. It really piqued everybody's interest. It drew a lot of people to the Dragons because I guess my excitement of the sport came through in my writing. And then I guess that season, because they were good, they had some tough losses. I always wrote the story the way I saw it, and they were very accommodating. Win or lose, the players were always there to give their side of things. Even in a situation where a drop pass cost them a game or a blown coverage cost them the game, I always had the guts to go to that guy and say, hey, how was the throw there? And that's hard to do. A lot of reporters, good reporters, it's not hard to do that. That's your job. You know, Aaron Garcia threw a devastating interception in one of the games. And, you know, he was my friend, but he also knew that I had to do my job. And I had to ask him after the game in front of other media, Aaron, on that read, did you not see the safety? And he's like, you know, had I seen him, I wouldn't have thrown the pass. And he started laughing. And it was so down to earth and real. And I think there's always a trust factor also, that they trusted that I wasn't out to kill them. I wasn't out to make the sport look like it was not a good sport, that I knew it was real. I knew it was tough. I knew the guys were an inch away from being an NFL prospect, or they were a prospect an inch away from being in the NFL. There was a lot of talent there. You know, Mike Fury, who was the best receiver I'd ever seen in the league, he went on to play for the Rams and had a great career. And he was phenomenal with the Dragons. I mean, phenomenal. So it was good. It was really fun. In fact, one of my teammates from that first game was Sean Tremblay, who is now the head football coach at Comstock High School here on Long Island. So we have that kind of bond, you know, from the Dragons. So it's pretty cool. You know, we can laugh and talk about some of the practices when I got knocked around, and he's a big fella, and he would laugh and go, you know, remember when this happened? Remember when that happened? But those are fun things.
You think Wong kind of maybe knew that was sort of going to be the result, that by having, I wouldn't call it a plant, but somebody from the inside would maybe, especially the most, you know, the most important paper in the immediate area, in their marketing area. I mean, I don't want to say you were maybe being quote unquote used in some respect.
Used?
Well, I mean, you know, the cynic could say that, right?
Yeah, maybe they were using me. Maybe I was using them. You know, maybe I was trying to do something in my career that would enhance what I was doing. Maybe I was a recognizable face to Long Island folks that they could connect to, and they could say, you know what? Look at Newsday's Gregg Sarra. He's out there doing that. That is so cool. That is what every ex-football player would want, that opportunity. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe it was ego. Maybe it was, I want to do this so that when people see me, they say, what was that like? And I get to tell that story like I'm telling it to you today, 21 years later. There's a lot of sides to that. Do I think they were they were shrewd in some of that. Yeah, of course. That's why he was a great businessman. He knew what he was doing. And you know what? And I knew what I was doing.
No, I also think too. You sort of hinted at it before too. And we've seen this theme over and over again with challenger or new and fledgling leagues and teams and new markets. It's sort of this. I don't know. This sort of like a lunch pail kind of mentality, right? Where the fans feel like they're much closer to these players and to this league. It seems more accessible. It's not like the NFL. It's not like the NBA where, the stars and the names and the people and it's all bigger and sort of more out of reach. This is a little bit more familiar and maybe more accessible and relatable. And arguably, maybe not so arguably, you're being part of this team in the beginning process and writing about it is almost the ultimate expression of that.
There's no doubt about it. And I felt that way when the offer came my way. And, like I said, there's opportunities in your lifetime that you don't want to look back and say, I should have done that. I never had that feeling. I felt that this was the right thing to do. And I'll quickly go over when the MLB went on strike in 1994, whatever, in the mid-90s, and I was offered to play on 5 different replacement teams. And I was really at the height of my baseball career. I was playing men's baseball all over the country, internationally, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Canada, Mexico. I was playing everywhere. I had never given it up, and I went out to the Philadelphia Phillies replacement player workouts in Santa Ana, California. Kind of similar to what was going on, the everyday man going out to make an MLB roster because the real players are on strike. And I got to write about it in Newsday for a couple of weeks. And I went out there and I had the greatest time with Jim Fregosi and the people, Buck Rogers, the manager, and Sal Agostinelli, the international scouting director. And to me, had I not done that and Newsday not given me permission to go out and write about baseball, what's really going on in these workout camps for replacement players, for scabs, nobody would have ever known on Long Island what was really going on. And honestly, 75% of the guys trying out for those teams were horrible. 25% were really good. 25% were in AA and AAA and forced to cross the proverbial line, even though there wasn't a picket line, But I don't regret that at all. And I had to go back in and cover Yankees and Mets for, I would say, 5 more summers after that, knowing that some people would recognize me. I was there with Rick Reed with the Phillies, and he was on the Mets. So I would see him in the locker room, and he'd come over and give me a hug and say, hey, what's going on? We were friends. But I don't regret it. It was another George Plimpton type of opportunity to go out and live the dream. And I did well. It was fun.
Yeah, it's kind of it's. I think it's easy to kind of have an opinion about that from the outside, but if you have that opportunity, right, and you have a legit chance because you have playing experience and you're good enough to be considered in a conversation like this, right? It's very hard to turn something like that down and to have the chops to be an actual, living, breathing journalist, right? You've got the tools of the trade. It's not like it's a circus event, right? It's actually, you actually have the opportunity and the legit creds to write stories about what you're seeing on the inside. And for, if you're a journalist, right, that's priceless. That's, in war terms, that's being embedded, right?
Yes.
It's no different in that regard, right? And how better to proverbially get the story than being in the middle of it?
You get the opportunity to see it from the inside, which is what every journalist wants. It's like when a journalist goes to war and they're embedded with the troops. They're in it. They're there. They're experiencing pretty much what the soldiers are experiencing. So we're going out to the baseball workouts, tryouts, was an opportunity to tell our readership what is going on. Is this going to be a viable product that the MLB owners are going to put on the field? Is it going to resemble anything of what the Major League Baseball players can give you? And the answer was no. Not even with all the AA and AAA guys that crossed over and were told, if you don't play, we're going to get rid of you. We need you to play. And then all the people they tried to find the diamonds in the rough from all over the world. Were there enough people there to make it something that people would enjoy, go out and spend all their money on at the stadiums? And then, unfortunately, they never really found out. When everything was over in a couple of weeks, the MLB players came back, and you never found out what replacement baseball would really have looked like. But I got to report on it and tell people what it was going to look like. I got to tell them that there was some talent out there, and I got to write about it, experience it. Heck, I got to leave New York and go out to Santa Ana, California, and do what I love to do, which is write and report, and to play baseball, which I love more than anything in the world, and still do. So, I'm blessed. I've had opportunities in my career to enjoy sports from all angles, from writing about it, from speaking about it on broadcast, from going on the radio about it, from playing, from participating. It's pretty cool.
All right, a couple other questions to sort of this has been great to sort of put a coda on this stuff. So, what of the Dragons for the rest of that decade in your coverage? Why do you? It seems to me that it was the league. They were going to continue if not for the league taking a pause and then some in 2008.
Yeah, I think when the league, look, they had to go in and look at their product and see why they were failing in certain places. Why were they unsuccessful in certain places? And why did they have to reduce the league and lose some teams? What made Albany, New York a better venue than Long Island, New York? What? They had to investigate that, because when Albany had their team, they packed the Pepsi Arena. Arena football was huge up there. Is it a small town mentality? And Tim, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why Long Island didn't embrace it the way Albany would. Orlando had a good following in Florida. Why? The Arizona Rattlers, they had a great following.
Orlando,
the Philadelphia
too, right?
Soul,
Tampa Bay Storm, right? Yeah.
Tampa Bay Storm was great. Georgia had a great team. The Philadelphia Soul, John Bon Jovi pumped a lot of money into that. I met him at one of the Dragon games. What a great guy. Loves football. He pumped a ton of money into that. That's why they were successful. It's not a hard thing to be successful when John Bon Jovi is going to entertain you at halftime, or after the game's over, you're going to get a couple songs.
You also had NBC. The NBC had also taken to the AFL in I think it's 2003,
Sunday
2006,
afternoon.
right?
Yeah.
And they went all
Sunday
in.
afternoon.
I mean, they did regional coverage. Now Troutwick, you could not have not been putting more marketing muscle against that league at that point.
No, they did everything they could to make that work. It's funny. I look back at it and I still question how it failed in certain markets, but it did. It did not do well. The excitement of the game, fast pace. You would think New York, that would be what New York wants. That would be what New York, would want to watch. But it didn't happen. The commissioner was a great guy, monster, big guy, David Baker. Friendliest guy you ever met in your life. Football through and through. He shook my hand. He shook my whole arm. Biggest hands I've ever seen on a human being in my life. And he thanked me for what I did with the Dragons. And I told him, look, thank you. I thank you that I had that opportunity, because he could have put the kibosh on that too. I'm sure Charles Wang had to ask the league for permission to go through with it. So, but they did make me sign a contract. Tim, I did sign a contract. I did have to sign it. I have that. I kept my uniform. I did have to sign a death benefit. That if I died, I hold them harmless. A waiver, a death waiver is what it was. Could you imagine? I almost thought Charles Wang was playing me when I did that. That it was trying to strike a little fear in me. That wasn't real.
So, okay, well, against that backdrop, why do you think the Arena League essentially came to its demise? And again, there is a handful of progeny that's sort of, in more minor league, I guess, fashion and stuff, continue and soldier on, so to speak, some of it with the actual original arena rules and others not with those official rules and stuff. But why do you think the sport kind of, for lack of a better term, petered out, and the AFL
I think
in particular, overall?
Yeah, I would say, Tim, that it was more because it was poorly run from the top down. I don't know that they had a great business plan. I know they filed for bankruptcy somewhere around 2010 in that area. They tried to reform the league. They tried to pare it down to fewer teams, fewer divisions, less travel, save money here and there. But, they ceased operations in 10 or 11 years ago. And I think they just had bad management. It had to be more because they weren't paying attention to the details. Not in nobody. I don't think there was any stealing or any of that else. I just think when you're selling a product, like you said, that's a challenger product. Like right now, they're trying to start a football league down in Tampa, down in Florida. I don't know if that's ever going to work. People like their NFL. If it's not the NFL,
they're bringing they're bringing back the USFL, which is really the spring league thing that is just sort of borrowing and or trademarking old names from a league that itself only lasted 3 years, and then trying to tap into quote unquote nostalgia. I don't know. It just seems to be an appetite insatiably. But it doesn't seem like any entity can sort of keep it running for any extended period of time. AFL,
no, I agree with you,
had a fairly long run by those standards.
Yeah, it's something that will always look. That NFL. That league down in Florida is allegedly going to be connected to the NFL. Did you know that it's going to be guys that are on
developmental
squads.
League of some sort, right?
Yes, yep. And that's the difference between that and what the Arena Football League offered, or the USFL, or the any of the XFL. The XFL had all sorts of gimmicks that they thought was going to work, but the real thing is what people want. And that's why all these other challenger leagues don't work.
All right. Well, let me ask you one last question then. Speaking of challenger leagues, I can't let you go, given all your time in Long Island and the Nassau Coliseum and the Dragons and stuff. I'm going to throw two other franchises your way and see if there was any of them that hit your radar, either professionally or you were aware of.
Okay.
There was 1996, the thing called the Long Island Jaws in Roller Hockey International. Does that strike a chord with you?
When I grew up, they had roller hockey everywhere, in schoolyards everywhere. You played on four wheels, not on inline skates. They also had roller derby on TV. Okay, I don't want to date you, but they had roller derby, which they rode around a track and elbowed each other in the face and scored, and everybody thought it was really cool. When they brought the Long Island Jaws out to Long Island, it was roller hockey on inline skates. There was no way that I thought that was going to make it on Long Island. It was at the Nassau Coliseum, all right, mid-'90s. I remember it, but I don't remember them doing a great job promoting it. Like, if I didn't hear about it at Newsday, who's going to hear about it? Nobody. And it's something that you had, it's funny. You brought it up just now. I hadn't even looked it up. I just remembered that they were only here for like a half a year or a year.
Yeah, we had, we were lucky before he passed away last year. Dennis Murphy, the founder of not only Roller Hockey International, but the ABA and part of the World Hockey Association. He was also involved in WFL and a whole bunch. I mean, he's like one of the patron saints of challenger leagues and stuff. And it's that Roller Hockey International thing is really intriguing. It was a summertime sort of filled for indoor arenas. And the Jaws only lasted one of those seasons, but it was actually a place where people like Jeannie Buss right now, the grand dame of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Los Angeles, yeah.
It was the franchise that Dad Jerry gave essentially to her to kind of run with, and she kind of cut her teeth on that thing. So you never really know with these leagues and teams like what the people who come out. You mentioned Aaron Garcia, right? I mean, one of the greater players in football history, NFL included, right? What a story of earning your stripes in the Arena League and then making it to the big show. I mean, all right. And one last one I'll throw out your way. Let's try this. The third incarnation of lacrosse, but only for 1 year, the New York Titans of 2007. Does that ring a bell?
The New York Titans lacrosse came after the New York Saints.
Correct. They had a 4-year difference. Yeah.
They had a great logo. It was orange. It was almost the similar colors. I wouldn't say the Mets, but it was orange and navy. They had awesome uniforms. They played box lacrosse. But again, they did a bad job of promoting the team and the sport. And there wasn't even recognizable names from the New York Titans. Like if you go back, or if I go back and look at the roster, the first thing you want to do, you're in a lacrosse hotbed. You want to put guys on this team that people would be familiar with, correct? I mean, you want to get going. The greatest players, I believe, in the United States come from the East Coast. It's changing a little bit now. Out in Colorado, Denver area, there's some good teams out west. But for the most part, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York is where all the great lacrosse players reside. You go back and look at the rosters from the New York Titans, and the first thing you'll say is, where are all the New York guys? They're not there, and I would have to go back and look at that, but I don't remember. But I remember there wasn't like many guys that you could write a story on. Hey, remember this guy played 3 sports at Cold Spring Harbor High School? Well, he's on the New York Titans now. They're the new lacrosse team at the Nassau Coliseum. You might want to go check them out. You have no marketing or nothing to hang your hat on to make people want to come out and check it out. And that's what I remember of the New York Titans. And I can't remember who was on any of those teams.
Well, that right there says something, right? I mean, of course, especially for a sport and a league, where the culture of lacrosse is so strong, you'd want to go out of your way to find local talent and heroes, right? To at least get the grassroots crowd excited. I guess the one thing I remember at the Titans, and I aired, they didn't last for 1 season. They lasted actually for 3. But where I got confused was it looks like they were trying to either by strategy or by circumstance be sort of a regional franchise. So I think they were splitting time between Madison Square Garden and the Nassau Coliseum. And then I think that in the latter 2 years of their lives, they were playing a whole bunch of their games at the Prudential Center, the newly built in Newark. And I don't know, that would seem to be 2-3 different arenas in one season. That doesn't sound like a recipe for success.
No, because nobody's identifying with your team as their team. You don't have a fan base. Now you're all over the place and you're in 3 different venues and you don't identify with anybody. And that's an epic fail right there from a marketing standpoint. I really believe that. Look at what I said to you earlier about the New York Saints. I can rattle off 5 or 6 guys on their roster, and I covered them how many years ago? And Jimmy Muley and Sal Locascio and a bunch of those guys, Rick Sarris and those guys, they now own 91 Lacrosse, which is the biggest lacrosse supplier probably in the country for equipment and organization. Their travel organization is massive. They have hundreds of kids playing through 91 Lacrosse, getting college scholarships and playing well in high school, training kids. They built a multi-million-dollar business after their careers with the New York Saints.
Yeah, this is the gift that keeps on giving, I guess, right? And that's heartening too, because it's part of the legacy, right, of all of these teams we talked about, right? And some of the local players that stick around or continue to sort of give back, if you will, to the community. All right, here's my very last question. So this has all been fantastic, and obviously the arena football part is sort of center to it. But maybe you can give our audience a sense of either personally or rationally the current status and the future of the Long Island of the Nassau Coliseum, because it's been talked about. The Islanders are now moving into their brand new facility near Belmont Park, which would now be, I think, the 6th major indoor arena facility in the New York metropolitan area.
UBS Arena. Yep, UBS.
Is that 1 or 2 or 3 arenas too many? I don't know. But what is the current status and the future of the Coliseum? Because it's fairly newly renovated, and it's still a very viable venue for lots of things. Maybe the transportation thing isn't any better, but what do you think its life is going to be going forward?
So I pass that all the time. I will tell you that it is much nicer as a venue since they renovated it. It is cleaner, more accommodating. The visuals from all the seats are really good. But what I will share with you is it will become, for personally speaking, what I think, it will be a concert venue, special events venue, speakers venue. I doubt very much you'll ever see a major New York City market team in that market from any sport being in the Nassau Coliseum. I just don't see it being somewhere people want to go. Concerts are great. We saw Michael Bublé there not too long ago. He was awesome. You get to see good country concerts there. There's a lot to be said for entertainment. I think it's going to become more of an entertainment venue instead of a sports venue moving forward. The UBS Arena is state of the art by the old Belmont State Park. It's absolutely gorgeous. I think parking has been a problem there because they've had overflow crowds, but that's something that they'll have to work on. But yeah, you look at some of the venues in our area. Flushing Meadows is beautiful. The Barclays Arena is just difficult to get to and not in a great area where the Nets play. I don't know how that survives in the next couple of years. The Nets need to be good for that venue to continue to be successful. Concerts there are okay. Sidelines for hockey games are not good. I don't think people are really in love with the Islanders playing there. So when they were playing there, it wasn't great.
I just feel that there's a little something sort of missing if the Coliseum doesn't. I know the G League Nets are playing there, and the Riptide and National Lacrosse League are playing there, but it's also something sort of. It's a piece of that history of that building, especially given the Islanders' success over the years, and then the early New York, New York Nets. I grew up in New Jersey, so I knew them as the New Jersey Nets, but I digress. Yeah, I mean, it feels like there should be something there in the top tier of sports and stuff. But if it's still around, I mean, the fact that it's still around, you never know what's going to still come around the block, and there seems to be no shortage of private equity money and investment in sports these days. So who knows what's coming next, and maybe something of excitement beyond the minors will come again to the Coliseum.
I would love to see the Islanders back there at the Coliseum, but that's not going to happen. I was sad to see them go and to be moved around the way they've been moved around. Every time they came back to the barn, that's the nickname for the Nassau Coliseum, that place was packed. People loved their Islanders. They loved them being at the Nassau Coliseum. So it's one of the true travesties in New York sports that the Islanders moved out of the Nassau Coliseum.
Well, if we hang in long enough, maybe we'll see another top tier indoor / arena football league team someday. What do you think?
I would love to see arena football back on Long Island and just see the Arena Football League flourish again, because it was exciting. And I followed it really closely. It's like people wouldn't know these things, but there was a guy that played in the Arena Football League that I thought should have been in the NFL. I'm not a pro scout, but this guy dominated for years. He was an MVP for years. And I got to see him play at the Nassau Coliseum. His name was Barry Wagner. Wow, was he a talent. Just an absolute stud. And I interviewed him after one of the games, and I said, well, what is it with the NFL scouts that you're not in the NFL? You're certainly talented enough. He said, I'm what they call a tweener, not big enough and not for certain positions, and too small at those positions, and then maybe not long enough at other positions, like not tall enough to be a defensive end but not pass it down and be an outside rusher, not big enough to be on the line, and maybe not big enough to be a middle linebacker or a linebacker. And the guy was just a great athlete, So, you just never know. People get breaks, other people don't. But he was one of those guys that you watch him play and you're like, this guy's fantastic. He really is. So I loved it. I loved covering it for those years. The Arena Football League will always be dear to my heart. I pridefully show off my Dragons helmet to friends. I have it in a showcase here at the house. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems like it was yesterday, but I look at the calendar and it wasn't yesterday, just yesterday. The Arena Football League, it continues to fascinate, and we look forward to more explorations in the months to come. Lord knows how many teams there were and various iterations and famous owners and just all kinds of stuff. So L.A. Kiss and Philadelphia Soul with John Bon Jovi and John Elway, of course, part of the ownership mix, and just so much to further explore there. So we would love to tackle it literally and figuratively more. And we thank Gregg for the conversation this week to kind of allow us to steer back to it after a fairly long absence here on this show. The article from which this idea for this week's episode came from is available to you from our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Just search up this episode number 250. My goodness. And you'll find a link to the article from, when was it? April 10th, 2001. Paper Dragon, a reporter learns what it's like to get in the arena with the pros and find he's got the right stuff. Get it? You might be able to link to it too from the show notes, depending on how you've received this week's episode. But if not, just go to our website and you'll find a convenient link to it. It's a great read. We'll also have a link to the game that Gregg played in from 2 days prior. That's April 8th, 2001. That preseason match from Fox Sports Net, back when that was a thing. The Gladiators at the New York Dragons. And a whole host of other goodies, of course, at goodseatsstillavailable.com. All of our old episodes, all of our ones to come as well. You'll find all of our social media feeds listed there for you. For example, we're on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available. You'll find us on Twitter at Good Seats Still. You can find Gregg on Twitter, by the way, at Gregg_Sarra. Gregg is spelled Gregg, 2 G's, _Sarra, Sarra, 2 R's. At Gregg, 2 G's, _Sarra, 2 R's, on Twitter. What else? You can send us email if you'd like about today's show, this week's banterings, or potentially other things, or things you've got of interest you like or hate, or somewhere in the middle. Whatever you want to send along. Please keep it clean. We're at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. On our website, aforementioned, you can also subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. There's a little button in there somewhere. Just give us your name and your email address, and we'll give you a little heads up on the coming week's festivities. And I think that's kind of all we've got. Our pal Jerry Payne has done yeoman's-like work again this week. We thank him for his twiddling of knobs, of course, as always. Thank you, kind sir. And we thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.